Today we'll talk about exercises for treating the spine, joints, anything really. And not just for treatment, but in general about exercises. The stiffest, the sickest, the crooked, the skewed, and the most unfortunate people. These are people who started their sports activities in gyms. Who started their sports activities with exercises on machines, with free weight exercises and squats. The most crooked, sick, stiff, unhappy people who suffer the most. Why does this happen? Why does this occur? Because he lived his life, a person lived. His movements were normal, natural. That is, he bent over, got up there, turned here, turned around, everything, as if everything was normal for him. Here he comes to the gym, before he didn't have, let's say, any experience in sports. Yes, that is, he kind of doesn't really understand where his arm is, his leg, what's there, what movements he's making there. So, for him, the usual movement trajectory is from the plate to the mouth. Here, just a little bit, he writes. But other habitual movements are within some distance from his torso. You know what? He decided to take up sports. You know, just to feel normal, as they say. Or maybe to gain a bit of mass, build some muscles here and there, or, on the contrary, get some abs. Summer, for example, is ahead or behind. And, to make a long story short, he started his workouts. At first, everything seemed fine. He was gradually getting stronger. But over time, a situation arises when, let's say, after several years of training during deadlifts, he's doing really well, lifting very nicely. Let's say, well, something like 300 or 400 kilograms on the barbell. And I feel good doing it. The blood vessels in my eyes burst a little, but overall I feel good. I mean, I have energy and my mood is lifted. It's normal, really. Please, bench press, 200 kilograms, with equipment, without equipment. That's it. Please, it's normal. There's a small pump there as well. Working with 100 kilos is all well and good. But then there comes a situation when, for example, our athlete is walking around the apartment, sees that a cat has fallen, let's say a kitten has fallen, wants to help it, thinks, well, Musha, you fell. Let me help you, he thinks. And he makes a movement, he bends down. He picks up the kitten, well, it's about 300 grams, just lifts it off the floor like this, and at that moment, he hears something tearing, some kind of crunch in his back. The next moment, he realizes that he won't be able to get up any higher, and his whole life changes from that moment. Now, for the rest of his life, everything will happen in this position. But then he, not the remaining one, lived. He then walked around a little with diclofenac. Massage is good. The muscles were worked through. The masseur was good. The muscles became normal. He worked them hard, powerfully, well and properly, everything again. In short, he recovered. Everything is fine. That's why? What's the reason? This recurred several times. If he noticed it there again, it would cost 500 rubles. He also wanted to pick it up in the metro, and long story short, halfway through, he realizes that, no, maybe it's not worth bending down any lower. And then he remembered his barbell and bent down. That's how it worked. That's how everything worked out. Everything is fine. Where does this come from? Because all the exercises are done symmetrically. That is, you do everything like this, you do everything like this. You think you need to keep your posture like this. You need to do everything proudly like this. Squat with a straight back. Pick up objects like this, and then do something with them. It's like you picked up an object like this. Well, usually, if you lift something, you don't put it back down the same way, so that's understandable. You took the barbell, you lifted it, you lower it. How often in your life do you have situations where you lift something just to hold it for a bit and then put it back down again? That is, if you lift something, you probably plan to move it somewhere, most likely. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe you lifted it so that mice could run through there, let's say. Under your television, your refrigerator. Mice are running, you lift it, and they run further. That doesn't happen. It rarely happens, but often it doesn't. Most often it does happen. So, you take some object, you approach it, you lift it for some reason, if you lifted it for some reason, and then you also move with it. You move, and then you put it somewhere. Let's say, you make a movement. If these movements and this body position have become so habitual for you, then you start doing everything in this position because you've gotten used to it. To do a pull, you need to do it in such a way that, for example, to do squats, you need to make these kinds of movements. Yes, that is, everything is kind of symmetrical, so you get used to being such a symmetrical person, so that you can press normally, so that the load is applied symmetrically at the same time. You can also train with one arm later, and you all start doing it like this, that is, you took this same symmetrical position and you start making movements with your legs. And here the problem is that your legs are actually moving asymmetrically. They are not moving symmetrically. Even if you do it like this, even if you move in this way, you see, they are different. They make different movements, and they don't match. You understand? The movements don't match. That is, here you remain motionless. Here you create one effort, even if you make your arms perfectly straight. But your legs, you see, are still moving. It's impossible to do it like that. Impossible. Impossible. Here, for everything to remain motionless, but somewhere something is moving. That is, if you start to apply force somewhere, this force gets distributed evenly throughout your whole body. That is, it's impossible. That is, if I push off with my leg, my shoulder also reacts to it and changes its position. That means I can't do it like this. I can, but if I walk like that for about 10 minutes, my back and everything will hurt. So there has to be movement. If there's movement in one place, then there should also be movement in another place. So it shouldn't be like something is fixed somewhere. Many people who come to the gym for the first time see how the bench press is done. It seems to them that this position in the bench press, where there is a maximum arch in the back, is where the maximum force is developed. That's not the case. So from the outside, it seems like during this arch, you're creating force. When you lower the barbell towards yourself, you arch your back. The arch appears because, first of all, it's to lower the barbell further down. Secondly, it comes from equipped bench pressing, where the shirt restricts the movement of your arms. And to make it easier to pull the barbell towards yourself, you pull it in, and automatically you pull yourself towards it as well. But when the reverse movement begins, the effort starts from the legs. And here, this subtle movement is the very first movement. That is, try it yourself. Just arch your back like this and see how well your arms move from here. Can they create any force? Effort begins when tension appears in the abdominal muscles. And at this moment, that's the first part of the movement. Then, the remaining push comes from straightening the arms. Well, that's just by the way. That is, there are movements everywhere. The difference between professional athletes and non-professionals is that professional athletes don't have such problems because they have the skill of applying effort. But if a person who has never done any kind of sport before starts working out, starts doing something in the gym, gradually, his movements become more and more constrained, more and more unnatural. And he tries to use all these movements from the gym, He tries to transfer them into his life, into a life where these movements don't exist. Into our everyday life, he tries to bring all these exercises in. They are foreign. They are foreign to us. They are foreign to our movements. That is, Where do you use it? How often do you use this movement, for example? How often do you use this movement? That is, you are forming it in yourself. You are forming it in your front deltoid. Let's say, yes, this is how a person trains. Yes. Then he starts lifting the bag like this. And in this position, he falls like this because his back gradually can't hold it anymore. That is, his movements become so unnatural because these exercises form an incorrect skill of applying effort. That is, he trains at certain angles, he develops certain muscle groups in a specific position, usually a symmetrical and comfortable one. There are no such movements in real life. That is, nobody just sits still all the time. You have to turn to one side, then to the other, do something with your hands, shift your weight to one side, then to the other. So that's how it is. That's why, first of all, asymmetric exercises are more important, meaning when you train outside of a symmetrical position and perform asymmetric movements, which we often use in our everyday life. That is, we practically don't use symmetrical movements. Even if your legs are together, your hands are together, still one hand is doing one thing and the other hand is doing something else. That is, practically all movements. Even if we make a symmetrical movement, by the way, when a person thinks they are making a symmetrical movement, it usually turns out not to be symmetrical. Mastering it requires extensive training. So, work out at the gym, eat properly, and everything will be fine for you.